Caroline von Selsing. I work at the WBCSD and I'm working on the We Value Nature project. So this is a virtual office hour talking about natural capital tools and resources. So I don't know if some of you have been to a virtual office hour before, but this is just a space to allow you to speak and ask questions on our topic today. But it's really about getting your opinions, getting you involved, getting you to participate and ask questions and learn from each other's and our two speakers that we have today. So just a few house rules. It'd be great if you could turn on your camera, it'd be great to see all your faces and change your name to obviously your name and your organisation, it's always useful to know. And we'll be hopefully getting a lot of questions through the chat function, so please make sure you're ready to type or turn on your camera to ask questions. Please make sure you're on mute, of course, and we'll be using some polling questions, so please make sure you're ready to answer those. So just in case some of you aren't familiar about the We Value Nature campaign, it's funded by the EU and is supporting businesses and the natural capital community across Europe with the aim of making valuing nature the new normal for business. The campaign is coordinated by the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and the International Union of Nature and the communications firm Opera. So our aim is to increase the uptake of natural capital approaches, such as natural capital assessments, natural capital accounting, nature-based solutions, and green infrastructures, by identifying barriers and opportunities and providing practical support through business activities, such as this one. So who we got? We've got my lovely colleague Katia on the line, also from WBCSD and Redefining Value. We have Saman Baghestani from the Shift platform, the creator, all the way from Texas, and we have Tim Polasek from the Capitals Coalition. So we just have a quick check-in question if anyone feeling particularly chatty and would like to tell us what they're hoping to learn about today and any questions that they'd really like to push forward straight away. So please feel free to turn yourself off mute or put a question in the chat. It'd also be great for you guys to introduce yourselves, so please feel free to write in the chat who you are, what you're doing, and why you're here today and what you're hoping to learn. It's also great to see. So great, we're hearing from Chris, who's a contractor interested in developing tools. Etienne, thank you. Ad hoc tools for SME. It's great, hopefully we should be answering a few of those questions. Data science. Great. So please keep filling in the chat and we'll hopefully get to answer some of those questions and speak to some of you throughout the virtual office hour. So I think we'll move on and we can start our first poll. So I will just launch this now. So our poll is, where do you look for and find resources for natural capital assessment? A generic search engine like Google, a specific natural capital or sustainability search engine, or we already have tools, a set of tools and resources that we use within our organization, we don't really look outside, or we consult external experts who advise us, a social network, or we just don't know. So we'll wait a few more minutes for those results to come through.
We had a few more people answering to the chat, Caroline. So we've got Emilio. Nice to have you, Emilio, again. So Emilio's from Iberdrola, was actually quite involved with We Value Nature and even took part in a virtual SAR call as well. And he's hoping to learn from examples and case studies on how to implement natural capital accounting. Yeah, that's really good. And actually, I believe Tim will be sharing some useful resources in terms of sort of case studies of where we can go for that.
Thank you. Great to have you, Emilio. And we have Lorena from Peruvian Renewable Energy Company. It'd be great to hear your opinion on tools and things you use over there. So I think hopefully we'll have a few more people answering the poll, but I think we could end the poll. We can see our results now. So I think you should all be able to share the results. Please tell me if you can't. Seeing the majority is I don't know, which I think is pretty common. It's quite a complex area and difficult to know where to start when you're thinking about natural capital and assessment. Really difficult. Useful to know that a lot of people have already set tools that they use. And the third most popular is they consult external consultants who advise us. So I think that's quite common. People asking experts or other companies where they get their information from. So it's very interesting.
So for those of you that answered that you already have a set of tools and resources that you use in your organization, today's call is definitely also going to be about you sharing those resources you know of. So please don't hesitate to let us know about some of the work you're doing. We'd be very keen to better understand and be aware of some of these typically internal tools that oftentimes people don't always know about. So it'd be great to share.
Yeah, we're really hoping to hear a lot from you guys today. So hope you're feeling chatty. So I think we can move on now. So I think we'll start off by hearing from Tim from the Capitals Coalition. So Tim, if you can.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for the introduction, Caroline, as well. And it's great to be on the call to give a bit of an update on the Capitals Coalition side. Also good to see everybody's looking at tools in a different kind of way. I suppose that's why it's useful to be on a call like this and hear from directly from the Shift platform how to use the toolkit and see what lots of other organizations are doing already as well by going through there and seeing what's useful for their assessment. So if you could just go to the next slide. At the Capitals Coalition, for those of you that may not be aware, it's since the beginning of last year, beginning of 2020, we have brought together the Social and Human Capital Coalition and the Natural Capital Coalition and are now called the Capitals Coalition. So really, we are a coalition of around 380 organizations that are dedicated to the identification, measurement, and valuation of impacts and dependencies on the capitals. Now, what are the capitals? Obviously, in all the We Value Nature work that you've been at and that we've seen, we're focusing for the majority on natural capital. At the Capitals Coalition, that's a bit broader now, looking at natural, social, human, and produced capitals. And so organizations come together across different stakeholder groups, from finance to government, science, accounting, standard bodies, business, civil society, really to continue the discussion around some of these materials, tools, projects, and work streams, and to develop that capitals approach within the private sector context as well. And so our shared ambition across the community is really that the majority of business, finance, and governments include capitals in their decision making, and that we think that this will lead to better decisions being made that include the value of nature, people, and society in those decisions as well. Now, how do we do this? If you could pop to the next slide, please, Caroline. Through ultimately 3 pillars which support that central pillar of changing the system. So there are 3: changing the maths, changing the conversation, and changing the rules. And the maths is about standardizing business and finance accounting rules for nature and people. Changing the conversation is really about educating, informing, and increasing skills and engagement to effectively commit and act for nature and people. And changing the rules is around creating, reshaping motivations and creating recognized and certified validation and verification processes, that accountability piece. Ultimately, for the whole community to get together and cause that change in the system and that post GDP perspective of how we want to continue with this sustainable development. And within that, if you could pop to the next slide, we have all sorts of projects and work streams and materials that are being developed to help organizations in that journey. And a lot of these projects are done by all coalition organizations themselves, in partnership with each other, or with our advisory panel as well. There's 30 organizations that sit on our advisory panel. And some of those projects include things like the EU Transparent project, the environmental generally accepted accounting principles, looking at really standardizing those valuation methods and accounting principles within Europe. The biodiversity supplement to the natural capital protocol. So a lot of you will be aware of the protocol, and at the end of last year we released the biodiversity supplement as well, which allows organizations to see how can you take biodiversity along in those natural capital assessments that you do. And alongside that, there'll shortly be a navigation tool that will be published as well, which will help organizations through a question and answer system to really pick out tools and approaches that are relevant in your specific context. And a key part of this as well is the Shift toolkit, which we've been working together with WBCSD and the Shift platform to make these tools available, and not only have them available, obviously, but to be able to find them in a way that is accessible for organizations wherever on that uptake pathway of natural capital assessments they are, whether you're just starting out on an assessment, or whether you've already done this for several years and looking to develop even more. Because it's difficult to say that you've done everything in this space, because these things are so complex sometimes. And within Change the Conversation, we have projects like Principles of Integrated Capital. So what types of challenges do you come across when you start to bring in some of the other capitals into your assessments as well? When you're doing valuations of some of those impacts and dependencies, are you able to aggregate them? What are others doing? What's best practice? You know, those types of questions. And we'll be launching a collaborative platform as well shortly, where organizations can come together and discuss these topics in focused groups as well. Now, alongside that, we can't mention that without mentioning all the brilliant case studies that have happened already from organizations over the years, which we do showcase online as well, and also work with closely with We Value Nature as well on expanding on those case studies and finding out what decisions have been influenced, what tools have been used, how do these types of assessment inform decision making and change business direction as well. And so if there are any questions on any of these projects and work streams and things, more than happy to answer them on this call as well. If not, send me a message and I'm happy to talk in more detail about those as well. But I'll stop talking here. I think I've said more than enough, and I'll pass it over to Saman.
Thank you, Tim. That's great. So now we will be handing over to Saman from the Shift platform, their creator. So I'll stop sharing my screen and hand it to you, Saman.
Perfect. All right. So let me go and start sharing my screen. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm happy to be here to talk with you about Shift, which stands for Sustainability Help, Information, Frameworks, and Tools. This website represents what we believe to be the largest database of sustainability resources on the World Wide Web. It began at MIT Sloan School of Management as sort of a project, a brainchild of Jason Jay and Daniel Aronson. And I have been honored for the last 4 years to be able to sort of be a part of the organization and help manage it. So here you can see at the very start, the homepage is very much a search engine. I won't go too deep into the functionality, but there's a quick bit of a layout I want to walk you through. You can search for resources based off of the industry that you're in, based off of the issues that are concerning to you, or even really by job function. we will go ahead and, to keep this relevant to this particular audience, we'll go ahead and look at biodiversity. Now, what you'll notice is that for any given issue, whether it's biodiversity or water management or any of the others that you saw on the homepage, there is this sort of taxonomy, right, that we think about when we think about the entire journey from A to Z for any given initiative. And just to demonstrate that here at the macro level, let me pull this up here. So here you can see that under each of these bolded steps, if you will, there are a series of different sub-steps to be taken. Again, going from A all the way through to Z. So going back here to biodiversity, just to give you a quick example of how this website works. Again, you can filter in the same way that you would on any sort of e-commerce site. In this case, we're looking at biodiversity issues. But let's say specifically you're looking to measure and value nature. And so again, you can see these sub-steps. You can see, 241 different resources. If I were to go in and specifically say, I want to actually value, well, of course, your top hit's going to be the Natural Capital Protocol Toolkit. Our system seems to think, hey, this is the very best of the best in the world when it comes to this particular action. But then you can see a whole bunch of other resources that directly relate back to valuation, whether it's ecosystems or water valuation, etc. Now, it's all pretty self-explanatory. You can go in, review, bookmark, share. And if you want to understand why exactly these search results, I assure you it's not because we've been paid by anybody to promote their results. But I'll spare you this, this geekiness here and move on. So let's go to the NCT on Shift. So Shift has had the great fortune of being able to host the Natural Capital Toolkit for, I don't know how long it's been now, close to maybe 1.5 years or so. And the very quick way for the group to get here, if you're curious, is shift.tools/NCT. And what you'll find here are the 55 different resources that the folks at the Coalition's Capital and the folks at WBCSD have worked together to put together as a way for you to understand, what are the best of the best tools that exist in this space. Notice that you can, filter these down again, for example, by case studies, which I'm not seeing any here. It's slightly embarrassing, but I'm sure that within the resources that you see, there are case studies that are nested within them. In fact, this feels like a case study to me. But either way, this is Shift. Now, if there are tools and resources that, well, first of all, let me pause for a second and ask the group, are there any questions so far about what Shift does and how it might be of value to you, or anything else for that matter?
I'd also just like to point out that this goes in hand with the Natural Capital Protocol. A lot of the tools in the Natural Capital Protocol you can find on the Shift platform, and they help you go through some of the framework that the Natural Capital Protocol outlines. So they really go together.
Yeah, and to build on what Caroline just said, you can see here these filters that correspond right back to the protocol, right? You can actually filter your tools by the dependencies and by the impact drivers. So for example, if I say dependency water, you'd hope that what you're going to find here are, yes, there you are, some resources that are relevant to water. Excellent. Okay, now let's say there's a resource that you know about, that you feel your peers should know about, or let's say you're a tool developer. I think there was somebody in the group that mentioned that they are developing tools. If you would like for that tool to appear in the broader Shift database, there's a really quick and simple way to contribute. So the first of which is simply to create an account, which is free to do, takes just about 30 seconds. And once you do, you'll see at the very top right of the site, submit resource. Now, by clicking submit resource, you come here where you can just provide the name, the organization, the link, brief description, all the sort of metadata. If you don't know the answer to something, that's all right. Just make sure that you have a link. We do prefer a link directly to the resource as opposed to, you know, a marketing type of site. So once you've done that and you click next, that will actually submit the resource to the Shift administrators, me being one of them, and we will review it. And if it meets our guidelines, then we'll go ahead and make it public and available for the world to find. And I think that's about it. I think the only other thing I'll quickly touch on is that, you know, there are a world of different, what we refer to as contributors. And so if you would like to find a consolidated library of distilled resources by any given organization, not saying it's fully comprehensive, but we feel like we've done a decent job so far, you can go to this page called contributors, and you can quickly just filter down by the name of the organization. Here you can see WBCSD. If I were to say Natural Capital Coalition, you'll find them here, so on and so forth. And yeah, that's it. That's Shift in a nutshell. So we hope that you enjoy it and find it valuable and contribute back to it.
Great, thank you. Let me just reshare my screen. So
there is a, sorry, Caroline, did you want to?
No, I was just going to lead you into the slide after you.
Yeah, so Shift is actually undergoing a transformation right now where we find value in tools and resources, but what our learnings have taught us are that it's actually about the people and the connections that help drive progress. And so we're working right now, we're sort of going through an overhaul of the site. And what we're actually asking folks for is a little bit of time where we can set up a one-to-one sort of a research session. So our hope is that if you're a consultant, if you're an NGO, if you're a tool developer, corporate practitioner, or none of the above, but you still feel like you fit within the community that Shift is trying to serve, you can either click the QR code, which will send you directly to my calendar where you can reserve a time slot. We would be greatly, greatly thankful. No gift cards or anything of that nature. We are a very poor but talented organization. Or you can just email me and we can set up some time from there. But your input will influence the future of Shift. And so for whatever that's worth, we'd really appreciate any willing participants.
Thank you. So I think we'll now move on to just a Q&A. If people have any questions about something either Saman or Tim has asked us, just a quick Q&A, and then we'll go into our sort of proper plenary session.
And guys, don't hesitate to unmute and just ask the question here. That's the point. So you don't necessarily need to go through the chat. So I think, Saman, maybe one question I would have, do you have a bit more information in terms of the users of the Shift platform in general? Can you maybe give a bit of insights into that? Who seems to be navigating on there, how it seems to be most used?
Yeah, so actually most of our traffic originates from outside the United States, which probably is no surprise to anybody in this group. That being said, the site was originally intended to serve corporate practitioners. So folks within public and private companies who are looking to advance their progress on any given initiative. But what we've actually found is a good portion of our user base is actually the tool developers themselves, folks who are testing out different ways to do different things and would like to disseminate those tools. So it's a good mix of the people looking for resources as well as the people who are developing resources. And then you've got a little sprinkling of folks from, government and a lot of, sort of students and professors and definitely good representation from academia. But I think the primary way that the site is used today is where there are contextually relevant spaces, meaning, you've got Google, which gives you just a whole bunch of search results. But within Shift, and I didn't touch on this, you'll notice at the very bottom of the homepage, there's this area that we refer to as curricula. And this is an area where we choose a particular thing to do, like let's say setting science-based targets or measuring the impact of your initiatives. And what we've done is we've actually vetted resources and put them in a chronological order of how to go about executing on that larger task, like setting science-based targets. And that actually is where we find the most traction, the most value. Yeah.
Cool. So is that a good way to link the separate concepts as well? So the Natural Capital Protocol can obviously help you with the underlying information generating process to inform things like setting targets and actual outcomes of that.
That's exactly right. I couldn't have said it better myself. And Tim, I invite you and the other folks at the Capitals Coalition to work with us to create a curricula that does exactly what you just described, right? You've shown the slide where you see the continuum from left to right. We could go about creating a guided experience for folks.
Yeah,
there's a lot of opportunity there. Mm-hmm.
I would have a question, if possible, still.
Please.
Hello, I'm Martin, and I work for the Denkstadt, which is a Central European consultancy. And I would have a question. What's your experience with how businesses are approaching the use phase of those ready-to-use tools? Because in our experience, for example, if they would like to check their financial position against the projected shift in the prices of commodities in the future, they do not take completely the knowledge or the technology of the tool. They partially use it, but they anyway create their internal price, and they might be adding the external component which is being calculated by this tool. So it's not the complete use of the external knowledge, but the partial use. Do you have the same experience?
Yes, Martin, that is awesome. And that speaks so much so to why Shift is pivoting right now from being a platform of simply tools, but actually a platform where we facilitate the sharing of knowledge that is generated within organizations. Because you're absolutely right. The tools themselves only get you so far. And what we've observed companies doing, in fact, recently we had an MIT Sloan graduate who went through the sustainability lab, works for Takeda, they manufacture heavy equipment. And he was very passionate about helping to set an internal price on carbon. And the way he did it wasn't so much about the tools. The tools were just sort of ancillary. It was more so about piecing together, different data points from within the organization, as well as then looking at sort of the externally available resources. Now, Martin, I'm not sure, I'd love to hear your input as to how you've gone about piecing together tools that are available with data that you have internally to accomplish a particular goal. And actually, furthermore, I'd love for the group to speak about how comfortable would you be with, let's say, you developed a particular way to measure, I don't know, the amount of ecosystem dependency you have. But it's novel, right? It's something that's unique to you. It's nothing that the world knows about. How comfortable would you be sharing that, not only with the world, but specifically even your competitors? And I'm not sure if I've answered your question, Martin, but.
If we take a circular economy as an example, there is a pressure for a cooperation between stakeholders that even have been in a competitive position before. And if it's needed from the circular economy perspective, the cooperation and the data exchange is realizable because both parties see the benefit out of that. So if there is a benefit foreseen in a specific action, yes, we have seen already the evidence of initiation of a cooperations between stakeholders that have been in a competitive positions before. If that answers your question.
It does, and I hope I answered yours. Probably not, actually. It's a tough question.
I just want to ask something here, and then I know, Caroline, you want to go on to some of the questions we've prepared, but the initial idea, so when WBCSD collaborated with the Capitals Coalition, or back then it was just the Natural Capital Coalition, in integrating the Natural Capital Toolkit on Shift, was really with this idea that we need to start standardizing approaches, which links with the transparent project that Tim mentioned earlier. Where we were noticing is that, you know, companies, organizations are using lots of different tools, and we're lacking a standardized approach to assessing nature. And so what you may notice as well on the Natural Capital Toolkit is that you have a way to provide a review on the tools as well. So the idea was to, first of all, kind of be able to direct businesses and organizations to tools that we knew are useful to others and are robust, as to also kind of start reducing some competition and encouraging people to make use of those tools. And second of all, we integrated that aspect of being able to provide a review so that then businesses and organizations can start really tailoring and targeting those tools that seem to be the most useful ones as well. And I think it's a really important feature, and especially in view of this need, really more than ever, to be more clear about what tool is most useful or not, and towards that standardization process is very much needed. So I did just want to add that point because it's quite an important one, I think.
Yes, thank you, Kasia.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And also to touch on Martin's question, there is that balance, isn't there, of having tools that are useful to inform your internal decision-making processes by taking bits from different tools for them to be relevant in your context, right? Because there is a certain amount of standardization in approach that you can do, but sometimes there is a need for a specific application of a certain tool in a certain situation, and you want that flexibility to be able to use that and inform the exact decision that it is you're trying to influence as well. So I recognize that that gray area that Martin was talking about as well, with different organizations using different tools for very different approaches and outcomes. And you may not want to report on any of it. You know, sometimes you just want to use it for your internal processes, and sometimes you want to use it specifically to go and report on the things that you're doing. So, you know, there are different approaches to using some of these tools as well.
Yeah.
Great. So to have some more discussion, we have a few sort of prompting questions. These are just general questions we'd like to ask the group to see if people had any ideas, especially, you know, how they relate to tools. You know, how do you identify emerging trends in natural capital? How do you assess what's most important for your organization and your industry? This relates a bit to our question of, you know, how do you find resources and tools for natural capital? You know, people suggested social network. Is that just through talking to colleagues, to peers? Is it by talking to experts? Is it the news? We'd really like to hear from you what you have found, you know, the best way to find these tools and resources, and how you go about sharing this with your company and externally with your peers in other companies as well.
Otherwise, we're going to have to pick on people.
Well, maybe Tim, could ask you about.
I think Etienne has something to say.
No, it was just before moving to the group discussion, because I have a small question to Saman for the Shift platform, but just I didn't get the time, I mean, to go deeply into the platform. But I was wondering if we are mainly working with SMEs, and I was wondering if we have the possibility to, you know, to make a kind of classification for ad hoc tools for SMEs and the other one for big company, because there are so many tools available. So I'm mainly working with small company with 10 or 20 people, you know, one manager and 80 people, 18 people, sorry. So sometimes they really ask us to directly target them to ad hoc tools and ready to use tool for them. and not big tools for big company to make reporting on environment. So
yes, you touch on a really important point. And if we really look at global GDP, right? Of course, we all agree that's by no means the only measure, but if we look at the vast majority of the output that's generated in the world economy, it is from those SMEs, right? And so we certainly want to tailor the Shift platform to provide value to SMEs as well. Now, if what I think I'm hearing is accurate, that you're looking for a way to distinguish between tools that are applicable in the sort of larger enterprise scale versus SME scale, that's not something that we've thought through, but I definitely appreciate that input. I think I think the one area I would point you to, though, if I may, on Shift, there's a thing that we call comparison sets. And within the comparison sets, basically what a comparison set is let's say, you have 8 different tools that all are about water valuation, right? It will essentially let you compare those 8 different tools along different dimensions. And so in that way, Etienne, you might be able to start to narrow in and identify the tool that is more applicable to the SME context. We don't directly call it out, hey, this is for SMEs, this is for enterprise, but there are other data points that we do address that help you understand what tool might be best for you. Now, the second thing I want to quickly add is actually 2 other quick things. One is reviews, user-generated content, meaning Etienne, for example, if there's a tool that you've used for any given application and it's on Shift, share that knowledge. It takes 15 seconds, 30 seconds to just say, hey, this tool helped this organization do X, and here's why it was helpful. And then what you start to do is you start to contribute back to the community about questions that you're asking of me, which, right? So it's ultimately, we're gonna have to all contribute to identifying what's the best tool for each context. The only other thing I wanna quickly add is there's a part of Shift, if you type in maturity model, you'll find an excellent set of resources that will point you towards the right tool for the right size and sophistication of your sustainability efforts. Meaning, for example, if you're a company who's never really thought about sustainability, there is a way for you to start to plan out where you should even begin. But we also have tools that are tailored to the organization who's very mature, right? So maturity model is strictly going to say, look, on the continuum of I'm a beginner to I am, really awesome at this, where are you at on that continuum? And then it sort of guides you from there. So I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks. And another, just a small question, Katja. Once you came in Brussels, you discovered the resilient coaching tools. I was just wondering if you can put this tool on the platform, because we have already we have currently coached about 100 company, and we have coached the coach consultancy offices also. And so this tools is clearly oriented for SMEs and is available in English. So I was just wondering if you can make kind of communication on this tool on the Shift platform.
Yeah, so as Saman showed just before, again, and this is also the idea of this call, is we want to give an opportunity here to update the platform with new tools that are out there. So as Saman showed very quickly before, you can easily submit that resource. You just need to have a link. And Etienne, if I remember right, you actually do have a link that directs people to that specific kind of game almost that you introduced me to. Yep. So absolutely. And I can't remember, Saman, if you had a slide that explained again a bit more the process or not. If not, we can also include that in our follow-up from this call on how exactly, what are the steps to add a tool. And then just one thing I want to add is, I remember, Saman, one thing you told us that we can do as well that's really helpful, and Etienne, we can discuss about this, and the other people here that are interested is, if I remember right, Etienne, Saman, there's a way we can create almost like a little separate page where we would organize the tools that are on the toolkit or Shift, and we could actually say, for example, this set of tools are really useful for companies that are trying to get started on their journey. And here may be a set of tools and resources that will be useful to that. Similarly, we could maybe imagine doing something similar, but that would be really for SMEs maybe, and say, here's a few tools that we know of that are really helpful for SMEs or that are specifically for SMEs. And correct me here, Saman, if I'm saying anything wrong, but I think that was also something that we could do, right?
Yes, yes, definitely. And I sent a couple of links. Etienne, you reminded me, actually, we do have within the comparison set, that first link, there is a way to filter down the maturity models by the size of the organization. In fact, it says client orientation, and you can distinguish between large organizations versus all. It's a little bit counter, it's not the clearest distinction, but if you say all, you'll be left with a filtered down set of maturity models and roadmaps that will certainly be applicable to the smaller context organizations. And then Katya, I did also provide a two-step process in the chat for how to add new tools. Yeah.
Super. And then perhaps good to know, we are quite massively promoting the SHIP platform through the We Value Nature trainings and activities. So it's also a good way we can also help kind of promote any tool that you want to talk about. And I think Tim, also through the Capitals Coalition, you guys are quite often linking up to the SHIP platform, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Organizations that want to get going with these kinds of assessments are always asking, you know, what are others in our sector or region doing and how are they doing it? You know, so it's always good to be able to send them to these kinds of useful resources. I suppose if I could ask Etienne a question about what type of demands do you hear from SMEs actually about what is useful? Because obviously at the Capitals Coalition, I think we've explored approaches with SMEs several times before, but a lot of the protocols and a lot of the work is fairly resource and time intensive. And so do you have, you know, the silver bullet for the balance between usefulness and resource use for SMEs? You know, what's your opinion on that?
But my opinion is that, for example, when we coach company, they directly focus on, you know, on easy things to do, like waste, energy, you know, lighting, changing the warming system, things like this. Mm-hmm. Because it's what we call the quick wins. You know, it's easy to do, and you just have a quick return in terms of economic return. And so those SMEs, once we discuss with them, they are ready to reinvest this economic return into a long-term action. And that's where we can jump on biodiversity, because it's really difficult for us to sell biodiversity as an economic issue. You know, it's really difficult to find arguments to say invest in biodiversity, take account of biodiversity into your capital. It's really for us really difficult to find the right arguments to motivate them. So we started the journey with other topics, as I say, like waste, energy, and other things. And then we just turn on biodiversity just after those quick wins.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear. So really focusing on shorter term, direct use cases, cost savings, those kinds of things before you bring out the biodiversity topic. Thanks.
I could, sorry, if I could join the discussion at this point when speaking about the quick wins or short-term wins. From our experience, I think a good tool empowers corporate social responsibility departments in the companies by enabling them to reach short-term wins, and it doesn't necessarily be in financial terms. Just kind of small improvement in the company processes thanks to the tool, and they will show it to the C-level, and the C-level then acts, okay, it gives us some gain, so please continue with this project and stuff like that. So that's like a small contribution.
So start small to go bigger, basically. A good way to convince internally that we can invest more. Yeah.
And if I can add to that, there are a number of resources. I'm adding a few of them here in the chat that are specifically geared towards exactly this topic of, you know, how do you convince leaders to buy into even larger investments, to think even more, you know, to think even bigger and go further. And so a lot of them are around, storytelling, right? And building up the business case, right? And other things like, ROI. How do you talk to your CFO or financial managers about, the economic value, right? So there are a lot of tools on Shift that will help you engage leaders as well as make the business case for why you should do more.
So we're talking a lot here about places where you can get information, resources, tools. But I want to actually point out here, and sorry, Emilio, but Emilio actually gave a virtual sour call not so long ago on a topic that is extremely interesting and kind of talks to the second question we have. And Emilio, I'll hand over maybe to you after it, but they basically came together as the energy sector in Spain to really understand how they can apply the natural capital protocol to their specific industry, what will be the useful resources to them, their useful tools, and went through really a full almost community-based type of collaboration, which is an extremely interesting model to me in terms of also trying to get understanding of what are useful tools and resources. And I don't know, Emilio, if maybe you want to just share very quickly a bit some of how that model of collaboration has been helpful to you and your company in getting the right tools and resources. And again, sorry for just pointing to you.
It's okay, Katia. I was in fact about to add my contribution to the questions. Yes, indeed. I mean, I was looking at the questions and how to identify trends and natural capital, blah, 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 all that stuff. Yeah, we have been working on a sustainability agenda for quite a long time, and it was clear to us quite a few years ago that we had to go further in terms of sustainability and going beyond what is emissions and air pollution and things, because that was our main concern as an energy company. But a few years ago, we started looking into how to assess better our activity and how to understand our impacts, and also ways to try and compensate and for our negative impacts. So that's how we started looking into all these matters. We did, I mean, you attend to a number of events like these ones we are all attending now, but many others, and you start looking at or hearing what things are coming. And then we also joined together here in Spain we worked closely with a couple of small consultancy companies, and they offered us this proposal of joining, I mean, pretty much in line with the natural capital protocol. So they presented to us the possibility of developing the energy annex to the protocol here in Spain. So, and that's more or less the long-term target. But we started with a first assessment altogether. I mean, and we were energy companies and oil companies, and collaboration was quite fluid. We do at least, I mean, I've seen this in a number of countries. In these environmental aspects and many others that are, side activities from our main activity where we would be competitors. But if we are not talking about the core of our activities, we do collaborate a lot. So we made this exercise together to understand how the natural capital protocol could be applied to the energy sector, to the different technologies. And we are about to release, I mean, has been delayed quite a few months due to the virus COVID, but we want to release this first report on the dependencies and impacts of energy activities with some classification per
Oh, you're muted. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, with a classification per technology and things. So it was quite an interesting exercise and a lot of debate. But it all showed how complex this is, if I can say that. I mean, and one of the concerns we are having, I mean, as I said, we have been working on the sustainability agenda for quite a long time. We are doing reports, sustainability reports, for a number of years, but we have these two levels of assessments. We have like the company-wide level, which is one issue, and then we have the activity level, where you have to identify, you know, with a much finer detail what's happening. So, and this we need to balance these two needs, and we need to come up with a solution for these two needs, and might not be the same. I mean, when you are doing an assessment on a particular activity or on a particular infrastructure, maybe goals and methodologies are different to the ones you would use when you are, you know, at the higher level of abstraction and at the company level, and it's quite. We haven't found the right tool yet. We are testing everything we can, and we don't have too many resources. But I mean, we are trying to do our best, and But I see a lot of activity, and I'm hoping there will be a much more stable set of methodologies that we can maybe choose depending on the application, and maybe also compare, so we can come up with results that are comparable to others, because otherwise it's really, I mean, it's not wasted effort, but it's less effective, to be honest. I'm sorry for this long comment, but I kind of tried to summarize what we've been up to and what we are looking for.
This is great. Emilio, thanks for sharing that. Shift used to actually let users distinguish between portfolio level versus company level projects and resources. So, I mean, I can definitely relate to what you're saying. Have a look around. If you see something that you think ought to be there, please do contribute. It would mean a lot. I
will have a look at Shift, yes.
Thanks, yeah, thanks, Emilio. And I think your last point is exactly that. So we need to you know, have a minimum of standardization so we can start comparing results and ultimately have companies compete on their real performance. And that's really how we're going to get to that kind of sustainability goals that we need as well today.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I see, right, is how do you get organizations to get comfortable, right, with sharing real data about their performance. It's a tricky one. I mean, we know a lot of public companies willingly report, and there's a resource called Pivot Goals by Andrew Winston, which is really an amazing tool. It lets you see a whole bunch of different public companies and what commitments they've made through their 401ks. Not 401ks, their 10K, their annual reports. And it also tracks progress. If you're curious, if you're looking for ideas, check out Pivot Goals.
Nice.
Thank you, Saman, and thank you everyone for contributing. I think if anyone has a burning question, we'll move to wrapping up. Last minute thoughts or? Great. Well, thank you everyone, Tim and Saman, for really interesting introductions to your topics, and everyone for participating. It's been some really great conversations. It's been really useful. I think I'll be passing to Katya, who will just have a quick.
Yes, thank you. So so first of all, a huge thanks again to Saman and Tim for your contributions, and especially for all of you guys for participating in this very interesting debate. Please do share any reflections you still have. I think I'd also be really keen to hear, as we're closing this call, from you guys, what would be your main needs in terms of better understanding where to go for the right tools and resources. It's a piece that we're currently working on, actually together with Caroline as part of the We Buy Nature campaign, to really help businesses and organizations understand where to go. So if you want to drop in there in the chat, what would be the most useful thing for you, that would be really helpful. And I really want to close off with a really exciting news. Actually, again, good to have you, Tim, because I was going to catch up with you on this particular piece. We're very excited to announce that We by Nature and all of its partners, so WBCSD, IUCN, OPA, etc., are going to be organizing a big event around business and nature, which is going to be taking place between the 11th and the 24th of March. It's going to be an event that's open to everyone, and it's going to be all about being action-oriented. So our tagline for this event is that 2021 needs to be the year where ambitions and commitments for nature are turned into actions. I think what we've all seen happen is that 2020 was kind of meant to be that super year for nature. A lot of the big conferences had to be pushed back to this year. However, what we did see happen is a huge wave of many businesses coming forward with quite ambitions around nature. But now we need to really make sure that 2021 is about implementation. It's about actions. And so we've wanted to create an event that's going to be very practical, where we'll have a series of sessions and activities across the 10 days. So it's really meant for people to be able to jump in and out into the sessions that make most sense to them, as opposed to being in a full day event, which can quickly be very tiring. And even more exciting to announce is that we are giving the opportunity for partners to host their own session. So we don't want this to be a We by Nature event where just We by Nature is talking. On the opposite, we're currently asking and looking for different organizations, different consultants, different businesses to come forward and host sessions during our event. So we've got a page for you to propose a session, and we're going to be accepting proposals up into the 1st of February. And perhaps another thing worth noting here is that we're also opening for sessions to be provided in different languages. We really want throughout these 10 days for there to be sessions around the topic of nature in a variety of languages. So I really encourage you guys to have a look at this, and maybe Caroline, you could quickly drop in the link to the event in the chat already. We're going to be passing on these slides after the call, obviously, but it would be absolutely amazing to have some of you guys come forward with some sessions you might want to propose during this event. And if not, to just come and join us in some of these sessions we're organizing. So that's just a quick shout out. And yeah, if, Caroline, sorry, if you can just go to the quick next slide. And if you have any questions about this event, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. More than happy to have a quick little chat with you guys and see how I can help. So yeah, as usual, our virtual office calls are going to be happening every month. The next one is going to be on, oops, I think there's a little mistake here. Oh no, there's not. 25th of February, which is going to be addressing the new nature-based solutions report that WBCSD just recently launched. It's a report on nature-based solutions for business. So we're going to have a few colleagues come in and present that. And then we also have a few trainings upcoming. So next week we'll be doing trainer-to-trainer sessions on our Module 1 and Module 2 training. And finally, I've already mentioned the word about the big event in March. And if you can just go to the last slide, Caroline. So last but not least, sorry, great, as usual, if you could please take just 1 minute to complete a feedback survey on our virtual office hour calls. We always try to cater to what people seem to want to hear about in these calls. And as you've seen, they meant to really be a space where we don't want to be presenting too much. We really want to give time and space for you guys to participate and ask questions. So if there's any topics that you'd really like to see in future calls like this, please do mention that into the feedback survey. So I think that's it for us. Again, a huge thanks to, well, especially Caroline for organizing this, Tim and Saman, and big thanks to all of you guys.